What's up, Drewskies? Angie here from the Power of Drew, and I have a confession to make. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been getting into this weird defensive state, and it's all directed towards this hate I've been hearing about the Micro Four Thirds sensors coming from these really lucrative YouTube channels. And I guess it all came to a head on Friday when I was working from home. So, my day job is as a senior DevOps engineer, and usually while I'm programming or engineering some deliverable, I have YouTube playing in the background. And I am usually streaming like some camera gear or camera tip related video. Actually, lately I've been really into these scam baiter channels like Kitboga or Scammer Payback. If you've never seen these before, they're absolutely hilarious. And these guys will call the IRS and refund scammers, and they just wreak havoc to their call center. So if you guys are interested, I'll throw some links in the description below, but they're, like I said, absolutely hilarious. Anyways, I have YouTube streaming in the background, and a certain fraud photographer's channel comes up, and a video starts playing of his that's related to the recent GH5 Mark II announcement. So he's absolutely being brutal to this camera. And if you've seen my previous video, then you know that I'm actually really excited about the GH5 Mark II. But anyways, he's absolutely laying down the waste to the GH5 Mark II. And during that video, he goes on a tangent where his primary argument against that camera is the sensor size, it being a Micro Four Thirds based sensor. And it got me thinking that, hey man, wait, I actually think it's a very relative sensor. I think this sensor is actually really, really cool. And I think that it has a place in the camera world. So I thought about it over the weekend, and I decided that I wanted to bring my voice, my tiny little voice that I have on YouTube, into this discussion. So that's this video. And I think a good place to start is really the primary argument against Micro Four Thirds, and that is Bokeh. Or Bokeh, I think that's how you say it. I had to Google it and have Google tell me the correct pronunciation. But essentially, bokeh is the aesthetically pleasing out of focus effect that you see in videos and photos. And this is done with a combination of using sensors that are generally larger and lens types that usually have a fast aperture and distance from subject, but I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole too much. The bokeh conversation when it comes to full frame and Micro Four Thirds is simply that a full frame camera achieves a bokeh effect easier or has a greater chance of getting a bokeh effect over Micro Four Thirds. However, that doesn't mean that a Micro Four Thirds camera can't get a pleasing bokeh effect. If you're seeing this image right now, I'm getting this with a Micro Four Thirds camera. So I'm using a Sigma 18 to 35 that I got from a fellow YouTuber. I think I spent about 500 bucks. Speed boosting that, and that is attached to a GH5S. And so I think the speed booster cost me about 150 bucks. So it's the Viltrox speed booster. And the GH5S I got from KEH for $1,400. So that grand total is $2,050. I don't think that's a super pricey solution to get this effect. Not cheap, but I don't think it's just way out in space when it comes to prices. However, price and cost is relative, right? What is pricey to one person might be cheap to another. And you certainly don't have to go out and get this exact same combination to get this effect. This is just the combination I found to be most successful for me. And so this argument that you'll never get an aesthetically pleasing bokeh that is similar to full frames on a micro four thirds camera, I don't think is very true, because what you're seeing here, I think, is aesthetically pleasing, at least to my eyes. And when it comes to bokeh, and since it's really driven by the lens that you use, I think that's gonna fall right into our next topic that I want to bring up in our micro four thirds versus full frame discussion, and that's lens. When it comes to lenses, generally the argument is started from the micro four thirds shooter, and it goes something like this. So since the micro four thirds sensor is smaller, the lenses are generally smaller and more manageable, lighter, cost less. I can throw more of it in my camera bag. And so that's a huge plus for the micro four thirds shooter. And right after that, the full frame shooter will bounce back and say, yeah, but those lenses aren't really a one-to-one comparison to their full frame counterpart, because that 2.8 lens is actually a 5.6, because you have to multiply the crop factor to the aperture as well. And while that's true, I think the real benefit is variety. And what I mean by that is, since the flange distance of a mirrorless micro four thirds camera is really shallow, right? The distance from the sensor to the lens. And since the micro four thirds sensor is smaller, or one of the smallest on the market, the image circle, right? The circle required for the sensor not to capture vignetting is some of the smallest on the market. As long as you can adapt the lens to the camera, be that through an adapter or a speed booster or super glue, you have like the greatest selection of lenses out of, I think, all the sensors on the market today. And so at one point I can have a super light lens for vlogging, maybe like a super tiny 14 millimeter f2.5 pancake lens, right, by Panasonic. At other times I can adapt a large lens to my camera, like what I have going on right here with the Sigma 18 to 35 speed boosted to the GH5S. And so I like to think about this with an analogy, and I like to use iPhone versus Android type of thing. And with iPhone, the form factor of the phone doesn't really change as often as Android. And because of that, manufacturers that make accessories usually create stuff for Apple first. So you have a really wide selection of accessories to pick out of for an iPhone. And to me, that's a lot of fun, right? It opens up the things that you can do with your phone more often. I guess it's more common. But anyways, with that said, I want us to move into our last important topic for this whole battle against full frame and micro four thirds, and that's performance. When it comes to performance, simply put, a larger sensor is going to generate more heat and require more computational resources from a processor. So it's going to require more powerful processors to power that sensor. And you can really see this happening with like the EOS R, right? So the EOS R release, it's a full frame camera, and when it did, it kind of got a lot of slack, or not really slack, I guess it got a lot of heat because that camera shooting in 4K had a crop, right? That camera shooting 120p could only do so in 720. And I think that's the reason, because of the processor powering that sensor. Now, let's compare that to the GH5 Mark II, right? By the way, both of those cameras are in the same price point. I think I just looked, the EOS R is around $17.99, and the GH5 Mark II is coming in at $16.99. And so that camera, that GH5 Mark II, is going to be able to do 4K 60 10-bit, which the EOS R can't even do right now. To shoot 10-bit, you have to have an Atmos and, send that image externally to that monitor. So with that said, and thinking about performance in general, not just with the not just with the processor, but also just what they can pack into the camera, because they have maybe more room to do so with a micro four thirds sensor. You're going to see really good IBIS systems like Olympus and Panasonic has. You're going to just see more features just packed into the overall body of the camera. Maybe you'll see a smaller camera that can do the same things. And that said, I think that really wraps up the whole performance discussion when it comes to full frame and the benefits that maybe Micro Four Thirds has. That just it requires a less powerful processor to drive its camera modes versus a full frame sensor. So let's wrap this up. So when it comes to cameras, I like to think of cameras like tools, and just like tools, you're gonna see the most satisfactory results by using the best tool for whatever task is at hand. And when it comes to Micro Four Thirds, I think that's the best tool for the content that I create. And likewise, it's the camera type that I recommend the most to people. I think I believe this for two main reasons, and I touched on both of those, right? So a Micro Four Thirds I think is the most versatile. They have the greatest lens selection because of the image circle size requirement of the sensor. And I also think that the performance to cost ratio is the most attractive, right? So you're gonna find a Micro Four Thirds camera packed with potentially higher end features that cost substantially more on a full frame counterpart. So yeah, like I said, I don't want you guys to walk away with this thinking I'm a full frame hater. I'm not. I like all cameras. They just work the best for me. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I think we're done here. I appreciate you. I think you're rad. Thanks for subscribing and liking and all that jazz. And I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.